and maybe others will join us. Welcome to week 4, and actually next week, when we get next week over with, guess what? You will be 1/3 complete with this semester, your last semester. 1/3. It's hard to believe. My wife, when I tell her what week is, she says, I feel like you just got started. I said, well, it's almost like, because things go so fast. But let me talk about things this week. I was much better pleased with things this week. I think I've pretty much most everybody is where they need to be. And so, a lot of progress has been made. I don't know. I think, Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Stephen, you submitted your CAP, didn't you?
Yes, I submitted
Yeah,
last night.
You got his in. Okay, I thought you had. Stephen has finished. Rebecca has finished.
I submitted today and just got my score
okay,
back.
Emma, you submitted yours too. I knew Emma was at a place where she could submit. So all of you are getting to that point. So that's a good place to be. So kudos, and the work has been. I've been very pleased with the work, and then what I've had to send back for revision has been minor things, and it's mainly what I talked to you about week 2, when it was highly recommended that that you go back and you look at all 4 areas to ensure that those 5 areas of the teacher working condition survey were pronounced in there. And if I didn't see it pronounced, I didn't want any problems with at all with your evaluation. So what I've done, I've just told you to go back and deliberately put it somewhere so that it worked. And it worked, didn't it, Rebecca? Stephen, I think yours, the way you did yours, it turned out very well. So, I was pleased with Emma. I think I told you the same thing. We went back. So just make sure that you are putting those 5 areas in there, and they're pronounced in there, that you can, that there's no problems at all with you when the evaluator sees things. Let me share my screen and let me pull up and this is under session 4, week 4, as well in your Blackboard. But this is what tonight's going to look like. We've got a lot to cover. So hang on and let me make sure. Okay, let me hang on and just know that we're going to cover a lot. I've given you comments about your work already. A lot of your assignments have already come in ahead of time, so I'm very pleased with that. We're going to talk briefly about your assignment 3 and the case study that you did, and then the main thing is I'm going to review CAP 4 responsibilities, because there's a few of you that are still there, just to make sure, if there are any questions. We're going to just quickly look at assignment 4, which is due next week. But then many of you are at a place, and I didn't do this initially, but then I went back and just this afternoon, and I got thinking about it. I said, some of you are already at a place that you need some direction with the SIOP, the School Improvement Action Plan. So I have made it a point. I've got that in there, and we're going to, and it says evidence 6, 5, it should be evidence 6. I'll fix that. But I just felt like that we needed to talk about that so that it doesn't hold any of you back that are ready to move on. So I am going to go over the PSYOP. I'm going to briefly introduce it, quickly introduce it, and then I'll come back next week and I will start breaking it down a little bit more when I know that everybody should be through with the CAP by then. These again are your week 4 responsibilities that you should have to me by the end of this week. Assignment 4.
Probably gonna ride with the gate.
Okay. Okay. If everybody would just mute themselves, please.
Celebrate. I'm going to you. All right, come on. I'm gonna run back again.
But your assignment 4, and we'll talk about that. CAP task 3 for a final grade, and then your task 4 of the CAP for instructor review. And pretty much by the time you get there, it's almost, you've almost got it to a point where I can tell you to put task 1 through 4 together. And a lot of you have done that. And I've allowed it because you're such a small group. I've allowed you to keep it as a running document. It's been no problem for me to look at your work that way. I may have some suggestions to make sure that you've got your appendices and your reference section in there to make sure that that is done. But for the most part, by the time you get through with task 4 of the CAP, is almost ready for my review without me having to tell you to go back and do anything. So have that there, and then I'll quickly tell you to go ahead and get task 1 through 4 ready for my last review, and then you put it in for a grade, and then I'll tell you to submit it to turn it in. So I would say that 99% of you you've either done it or you're at that point where it's going to happen by the end of this week. So good job on that. Let's look back at let's talk about your assignment for this week. Who would be willing to just give us a quick, so that everybody can be reminded, just a quick overview without reading this, a quick overview of what the scenario was for this case study? Just a quick overview. Okay,
I can do
Emma.
it, Dr. Stebbins.
Thanks, Emma.
So thinking back to the case study, it was about a student approached a principal, a former student approached a principal and confided in that principal that a teacher had been inappropriate, had sexually assaulted her, taken inappropriate photos of her, still had that kind of evidence while she was a student. She never reported it because she didn't want to feel embarrassed. She didn't feel like it was like, her place to report it. But now she has a young cousin there. He's still a substitute, though he's retired, and she's afraid of other students also being victims of him. And she's asked you to do that with that information, what you will, but she doesn't want to come forward necessarily because of her embarrassment on the situation.
Okay. Arias, let me pick on you. When you met with your team and when you thought about this, and let's go back to when you were in 603 and you dealt a lot with with school law and policy and those things. What was the biggest, that when you got through reading it, what was the biggest thing that stood out to you from the very beginning with this case study?
I thought, well, if this was me, my next step would be to call or make contact with my Title IX coordinator, just because this person is still in our building and still has access to students currently. And so I would need to follow the protocols put in place by my district to so they can start a formal investigation just to make sure nothing is currently going on. I think that was my initial thought, and that was a lot of my team members' initial thought. And then we also talked about just allowing due process and not letting our own biases get in the way. So yeah.
Okay, what do you think about anybody? 10 years. 10 years. Nari, talk, because I know you had a lot of conversation on this, so that's
I
good.
did.
It's good.
I did. I had a lot of questions. And I mean, my group and I came to a consensus that it had to be reported, but I had an issue with how it came about. She was out in public, pretty much minding her business. And of course, it did not say that, you know, she was wearing her badge or whatever, but I don't know if I would have had the conversation there. I would have taken the conversation. I would have said, okay, I need you to come with me. You can come and I'll meet you at whatever time. Nobody has to be in the building, but I need to meet you within the walls of the school because number one, after I thought about it, and I didn't think about it until after I talked to my group, was you're out in public.
Okay, I'm going to go back on. You just said something. I'm going to call you on the carpet. You said I would take her to the building and I would say nobody else would not have to be there. Do you think that's a good practice?
It's not necessarily a good practice, but I think it's a better practice than, well, not nobody else. Of course, maybe an assistant principal or something.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. I would
Yeah.
never, ever,
No.
with as sensitive as that was,
Mhm.
I would never have entertained that by myself in a building. And even, you know, I paid attention, at least they were out at a table in the front. You know, I would have never gone in an isolated area with it because not knowing her and with the nature of this, who's to say that they're not going to say something about you?
Mhm.
So, you know, those are things that you have to, there were a lot of red flags, you know, in this. I mean, it's truly something that you can't just brush under the rug, but it's something you have to really, really think about. Matt, what do you think about it? I saw you shaking your head. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Dr. Stedman. I hate got in here a little bit late, so I
It's
hope I
okay.
don't reiterate anything someone else has already
Right.
said. But you know, for the first thing on this case study, you know, you take that information. I think you go to the experts to handle that situation. The school resource officer would be, you know, informed of that immediately. I assume, and at our school, we've got a good relationship with that individual, so that's in regular contact. And then human resources would guide the direction I would go in that, because those are the folks that are the experts and know the best way to handle that. Additionally, I would try to mitigate the fallout on the school level, so the focus could be maintained on you know, the education of the students in that building, and try to mitigate the circumstances as much as possible from that standpoint.
That's good. And I'm going to tell you, you know, it made me think back to my years as a high school principal, especially, and then my years at the superintendent's office. It made me think about, you know, Lord knows the stuff that Dr. Revis that we encountered over those years. I could write a book just about, but I thought about this too, and I go back to Nari, what we talked about, the 10 years. There's a lot of things that are questionable, because you even wonder, is there a statute of limitation on some of these things? You know, so Matt said this, maybe not in the order. He said something about the resource officer first, and then he said human resources. I'm just telling you, me, Dr. Revis, I would have entertained her, Nari, where she was to a degree. And once I would have listened, and I would said, thank you for the information. May I have your phone number where someone can reach you? I need to speak with someone in human resources about this, and someone will be getting back with you. in the near future. I think those are kinds of things that you have to handle pretty delicately. And you've got to always remember to you got to take care of yourself. You've got to always remember, don't ever put yourself in a precarious situation where you could be, your character and your name could be questioned. And there was a time, Dr. Revis, when we could bring people in our office one-on-one and we didn't have to worry about stuff like this too much. There was a day when we could do, but those days are gone. And as all of you are moving into administration, you have got to take care of yourself. As the leader, you need to make sure that you stress this to your staff, your assistant principals. When you do become a principal, and when you are an assistant principal, you're the one that many times has to catch people before it gets to the principal. A lot of times it comes to you. Make sure that you put yourself in a situation where it doesn't backfire on you. Be careful at all times.
Dr. Stedman,
Go ahead, Matt.
I don't think Mary's on here tonight, but I remember in our Zoom session, she mentioned the fact that it was alleged allegations as well. So there's a part of me, I think the case study leads you to believe that this is a shut and dry case or a slam dunk case. But, I think, and I want your thoughts on this. I think a good administrator would view that with some skepticism. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you. And I just want to make sure, this is one person making an allegation and the experts need to follow that a little bit further before anyone jumps to conclusions. Would you say that would be wise?
I think that would be very, very wise, because now you think about the Spanish teacher. His whole reputation is at stake based on this one comment. Now, again, I would never put, as an administrator, I would never put my neck out on the chopping block. I would listen, and then I would put it in the hands of the higher powers, because what they're going to do is, when I was at the central office, I would pull in my peers, the superintendent and others, if it was a volatile situation like that, and we would brainstorm. I didn't act on an island by myself. I did student services. So a lot of student services was very equated to human resources. A lot of those same issues were. So, and then it didn't matter. Dr. Revis, I had to deal with, I was not human resources, but I had to deal with a sexual abuse allocation on a principal from a teacher assistant. And the superintendent at that time said that you're in charge of this investigation. So I had to go through that entire investigation. I interviewed all kinds of people. And, I had to be very, very careful with this, because, this principal's career and his future and everything was at stake. Now, at the end of the day, when it was all over with, I felt like this principal was guilty. The only thing I could do was I made a recommendation to this person who had their years in to retire. And when I met with them, I said, I can't tell you what to do, and I can only recommend to you what I would consider. I said, if you go out on your own, then you can leave with some type of dignity. I said, but if you don't, I said, I have to take this the next step. I said, and I don't have any idea where it's going to go. I said, but it's probably not going to be good for you. And that person did decide to retire after that conversation. Dr. Revis, I'm sure you've had to deal with some stuff.
Right. Well, first and foremost, I took a little bit different take on things,
Mhm.
because what Molly has done is she has confided in you a criminal offense.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, that's a criminal offense. Like you said, Dr. Stebbins, I don't know the statute of limitations and the law and all that. But after I contacted my superintendent, now, I worked in a district of 13,500. So not a large, about a medium-sized school district, I would say. That kind of thing would immediately rise to the level of the superintendent.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether this gentleman was still employed or whether he was just substituting or whether he never had any contact with any of my students right now. She has alleged a criminal offense.
Right.
So what we did, we contacted the superintendent. He immediately would contact law enforcement, and the law enforcement would launch the criminal investigation.
Exactly.
Now, sometimes they would keep us involved and sometimes they would not. Now, that's the downside. When you turn it over to law enforcement, they may not keep you involved like you want to be, of course. But the good thing is they are the experts in criminal investigation. We're not, we're educators. And, I think I don't know if everybody else handles it that way, but it's not exactly black and white. I think they throw in this case scenario, I think they throw in the fact that he, has retired, but now he's just subbing. It's been 10 years. All of that doesn't matter. It's a criminal, it's an alleged criminal offense.
But as a
and-
principal, Dr. Revis, I think the main thing is you've got a responsibility as a principal, but you need to make sure that this is not your job to
Right.
take care of this. You get it out of your hands. You listen, you do
Mhm.
what you need to do, and then you move on. And what you need to do. Now, I'm going to tell you, the human part of us don't want to let go of stuff like this sometimes because it gets exciting. But you've got to let go of it. And I'm going to tell you this. You don't discuss it, because guess what? They'll say, well, Nairi said, or Miss Henderson said, you know what I mean? And the next thing you know, you could become liable for something. So as the leader, you've got to be very, very careful with things.
And I think one more thing, Nairi brought up a good point. It was out in public. Well, sometimes people spill it wherever they spill it, and there's not much you can't make them take the words back once they done spilled it out. But I think I would take a moment to tell Molly, I know she doesn't want to pursue it, but you're a mandated reporter. You have to pursue it, and just tell her, Molly, I got to turn this over. I can't sit on this, or I am liable.
Right.
And, when you turn it over to law enforcement, then they're going to get in touch with her. Now, leave it to them to decide whether she's going to come forward or whatever. All that stuff is in their ballpark.
Exactly.
But I would tell her that I had to take action. I'm sorry. This is where we are. You share this criminal alleged activity with me, and I have to move forward with it. I can't sit on it.
That's right. Good. Okay. Any more comments about the case study?
Dr. Stebbins, the only thing that I would say that I would add, that after I thought about it, met with my Zoom, I met with my administrative team, just got lucky that I met with them. And one thing my principal brought up, we thought was a great idea. He said, if you were in a situation like that, I would advise you to document time, date, get all the details, the situation, everything that you remember, and then document the details that's told to you, so that if law enforcement or somebody wants that, you can say, here's what my statement, here's how it was perceived to me, where it was, the location, the time. And the only reason why, like he said it really just covers you, because you are in public, and you could, maybe there's a security camera. They say, well, no, I didn't talk. Molly goes and says, no, I never talked to the administrator like that. He didn't say anything. Well, they said, well, man, we've got you on this security camera at this restaurant. talking at this time because there were some documented notes and there was some stuff that was kept. Because it made me think back just as in my teaching time, anytime you talk to a parent on the telephone, anytime you have any type of contact outside of your job, you're to document just so that you've got that if you move forward, and you can always refer back to that documentation.
Document, 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 document. That is very, very important. Thank you for bringing that up, Philip. Shay.
I was gonna say the same thing that you guys said about whether or not it's the time has passed, that once we have been told we have to report it. But also, even if the statute limitation on Molly's situation, she did say there was suspicion that her cousin, her relative, so that makes it today and in the present. So, forget the statute limitation on her situation. If nothing's going to be done, they would have to investigate their current situation.
That's a good
And
point.
when I looked up and tried to look at statute limitations, I saw 10 years for the state of North Carolina. That's a state not necessarily under what the education law may be, but I read 10 years on that.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you for sharing that. Somebody else before we close out.
I wanted
Yep.
to say something else. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Nari.
I think it was Shay last time during our group, and we did, and like I said, we all did agree that we had to report because we're mandated reporters. But I think we had a conversation last week about taking your personal feelings out of it, because I felt conflicted. Because if it's not true, this man's life is ruined no matter what. And I think that's where she said, it's just over. That's not up to me. I know what I have to do, but I just felt very conflicted about it. And then the statement, I think she made a statement within the case study saying that, well, after I graduated, he didn't want anything else to do with me. So that made me feel like, are you angry?
Yeah.
I mean, was this more than is this get back? Was it a relationship, or was it him doing something against the law?
Right. And if it was true, he was wrong because she was a minor.
Right.
But she said several things that let me know that she was not innocent in any of this. That was my opinion. So but anyway, there's like I said, there's a lot of directions you could take on that, but it was a good, I think it was a good case study for some good discussion. And y'all did a great job. Zoom leaders, you did a great job leading, and overall, all of you did a great job with the teams. Let's very quickly let me pull this back up, just as a reminder. Let me come down a little bit. And many of you have done this already. This is assignment 4 from your Glickman book, chapter 6. This is a very, very, very important section or an assignment. It says, explain the concept of the Johari window and why it would be important for a school leader to know thyself. I want you, and even if you've completed this assignment already, I want you to go back and I want you to reflect on this week, because we're going to have some good discussion with this next week. You will actually do an assessment with the Johari window for yourself that will help you know thyself. I want us to be able to talk about what is the importance of the Johari window, and I want you to reflect on yourself as a leader. It's also going to talk about something called cognitive dissonance. I want you to really put some thought into that. And the example that you cite, I'm not even going to talk about what cognitive dissonance is. If you don't know yet, you need to understand what it is, be able to talk about it, and give a good example as it relates to you personally. We're going to have some good discussions with that next week. Let me minimize this, and I want to show you something. Let me see, is that it? Let me see, that's not it. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, when you go into Blackboard under session 4 this week, I want you to look, and some of you may have done this already, but I have deliberately put a lot of stuff in there about the Johari window. I want you to take the time, and I want you to, even if you've done the assignment, I want you to go back and make sure you've done all of this. There's a little video in there, and it really gives you a good understanding of what the Johari window is about. Then look at this information here on a model for self-awareness. Take the Johari window exercise, and then look at this Johari windows quiz. Do anything that you can, and make it applicable to you, and let's be able to talk about this. Have a great, good scholarly discussion about this as it relates to you as individuals next Wednesday. Okay? Any questions about the Johari window? Those that haven't done, is a good exercise, a good activity. You're going to enjoy doing that, or you should anyway. Let me come back to our agenda. The next thing I want to talk about is CAP Task 4. Any questions about CAP Task 3? Most of you have, like I said, 99% of you are where you need to be with that. And I don't have any qualms about the work that you've done. Any questions about Task 3, the third of the 3 analyses? Let's look at Task 4 for those that have not finished it very quickly. With Task 4, your responsibility is to take everything that you've done in Task 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to put it together in, I call it an action plan, in a framework. You're going to graphically display the information from the climate analysis, the school environmental analysis, and the cultural competence analysis. Remember, with each one of them, you had to come up with suggestions of things that you could do to improve the climate of your school. In the first one, you had to come up with suggestions of things that you could do to improve the overall school environment based on the work that you did in Task 2. And in Task 3, the cultural competence, you had to come up with activities and things that you could do to improve the cultural competence of your school. Now what you're doing, you're taking all of that and you're going to put it together in a framework. You're going to put it in a visual framework, and let's call it an action plan, a plan of action for improvement with the culture of your school. What I would tell you to do as you're doing that, go back to those 5 areas of the teacher working conditions survey. Make sure that they are visible in that action plan. In fact, I would go back and I would have 5 columns, and I would have each of those listed, and I would tie in my activities. I would relate them to, or every one of my activities, I would relate them to that, and make sure that you've got something related to all 5 of those areas of the teacher working condition survey. Make sure it's visible so that your evaluator has no problem seeing that you have consistently done what you needed to do with those 5 areas throughout. Are there any questions about that? Make sure, don't just do the visual display. You need to make sure that it is preceded with a narrative introduction. And that's all you've got to do. Once you do that, that's all you've got to do. Now, I got ahead of myself down here. And there's some more things to talk about that in there. But I had said at the very end that you have to present this to administration. You don't. That does not have to be presented to administration. That was, I got ahead of myself. It's always good to do those things, but you're going to have to present the PSYOP, and all of this will be included in that. So that is not necessarily a requirement. It's a best practice, but it's not necessarily a requirement. And as soon as you get that done, get it to me. I don't think it probably shouldn't. It shouldn't take you a long time to do task 4. And as soon as you get it done, I can clear you and tell you to go ahead and put 1 through 4 together, and I can get you into Turnitin, and possibly, you know, many of you have already done it. Possibly by the end of the week, you could have the CAP finished. Okay. Make sure that it includes your reference section as applicable, and make sure that it includes your appendices as applicable as well. Okay. Any questions about the rest of the work that you've got to do with the CAP? Any questions? Okay. Well, the final thing that I want to do is, some of you are already at this place, and even if you're not, you're going to be there. So I'm going to just do a brief introduction of the PSYOP, which is your last of the 6 evidences that you've got to do, because those that have already completed the CAP, I don't want to hold you back. And then what I'll do is I'm going to quickly go over some things today to get you started, and then I will break it down. I will break it down better next week, and you know, we'll talk about it you know, more intimately with each part. Before I do though, just a reminder, your strengths-based leadership activity that you've got to do, don't wait until the last minute to get started on this book. You need to go ahead and get started on it and plan this in your schedule to begin reading. I would write in this book, I would underline it. I would look at my activities ahead of time. You know, what is it that you've got to do, and actually look for those things, because there's several things that you've got to reflect on. When I did that assignment, guess where I took it from? Word for word from this textbook. Word for word from it. You'll see I've underlined, I've got papers in here, all in this book. So the word from word, they're in there. So you know, make it a working document book that you can refer back to. And again, look at your assignments ahead of time, so that as you read, you can make connections with that assignment, and it'll make it easier when you get to it. Okay, and we'll talk about that more next week too, but I need you to go ahead and make sure you get started on that. PSYOP. The PSYOP is an abbreviation for your School Improvement Action Plan. Guess what? For the last year, that's what you've been doing. You have been working step by step, inch by inch. You have been working on the different components of a School Improvement Action Plan. The CAP is actually the last of the 5 evidences that goes into your whole combined School Improvement Action Plan. So that's what you're doing now. You're going to go back and you're going to take bits and pieces, parts from everything that you've done, from the APSL, the APTEL, the OMA, the SKIP, and the cap. You're going to take pieces from all of that and you're going to put them in a logical, meaningful order in evidence 6, and it will become your school improvement action plan that your culminating responsibility will be, this is what you will present to your administration and possibly to the school improvement team, as your final responsibility with your evidence work. So let's look at it. I developed this a couple of years ago. I have gone through and I have broken it down. And if you'll follow this, you'll have no problems. You've got to follow it. There is a template in your in the SIOP material section in Blackboard. There is a template that you must follow in there where you fill in the blanks with the information. You know that you've got your cover page that simply puts your name on there. That's all you've got to do for the SIOP. Then you've got your school profile that you've used consistently with each of your evidences. You'll pull your school profile in there that you've used consistently as your next activity. Then you go into task 1. Now, I want you to look at task 1. Now, I want to remind you, there's a lot of work that you're going to go back and you're going to pull. But I don't want you to get the mindset, oh, this is just a copy and paste. It's not just a copy and paste. There is a lot of copy and paste, but it's got to be done with integrity and it's got to have meaning. There is additional narrative work that has got to be done to pull it all together. So don't think that I can go here and put this here, put there. It's got to mean something when you go back there and pull it and put it here. Okay? So let's look at task 1. It's called your school data project. Now you've seen that word data consistently throughout this program, have you not? You have looked at school data from the beginning to the end in some form or fashion. You've looked at it. Well, you're going to go back and you're going to look at it again. You may include some updated information, but guess what? For the most part, you've got everything that you need already built in the work that you've already done. So let's look at that. You're still working with your PLC, and your PLC may be people, it may be new people, it could be your administration, part of your administration. You decide. It can be bits and pieces of your established PLC. It can be your school improvement team, administration, combination of all them. But you've got to have a team that you're working with. You've still got to lead and show evidence of leading in this final evidence work. And what you're doing your final analysis of school data that will assist the team to formulate the following. This is what you're looking at. In conclusion, you're looking at formulating a clear image of the school's academic accomplishments. You're formulating opportunities for growth. Now, when you do this work, I want you to be very specific and I want you to be deliberate. Now, what I've done, I have outlined specific things that are non-negotiables. These must be in there, but guess what? It's not limited to these things. So look at the first one, attendance. You see that heading, attendance? Guess what I better see in task 1? I better see attendance. And I want you to talk about your school's attendance, and I want you to show me some graphic information about your school attendance. Guess what? Attendance impacts student achievement, doesn't it? Okay, so you're going to talk about school attendance, and we're going to relate that to student achievement. Guess what? We've told you a long time ago, we said that you can't do, your focus cannot be on attendance, your focus can't be on a discipline, but guess what? We're giving you permission to do that now. You're going to talk about discipline at your school. Now, what do you think you would do? You would pull discipline data from your school. And the trend is, I would look at the last 2 years at a minimum, and usually to get the best information, look at the trend of what discipline, attendance, and those things look like for your school over the last 3 years. Now you've got some of this information already embedded in other work, and I'm going to show you where it is in a minute. Then you can go back and talk about standardized test results. I don't need to say any more, do I? You're going to talk about benchmark test results. I don't think I need to say any more. And then this leaves it wide open with the ... Any other data determined essential to tell the story of your school as it relates to student achievement. You're telling the story. Now note, you will disaggregate the data by subgroups. And again, you've got a lot of this already, utilizing EVOS or other data analysis tools that measure academic progress to set appropriate academic goals and expectations to assure each student at a minimal meets or exceeds expected growth. The school data project will be the foundation. This is your foundation. Guess what? If you don't build a foundation, the house is going to fall. So student achievement, that's what schools are all about. Am I right? We're about the students. If it wasn't for the students, guess what? You wouldn't have a job. You wouldn't need to be there. So the foundation is student achievement. It's about the students. So you've got to build a strong foundation when you build it. Okay, this tells you things that you must do and you must include. I'm not going to go over that yet. I want you go over it on your own, but I'm just getting you started, and then we'll break it down next week. But guess what I've done? And you'll find this at the end of each section. The following evidences are where you can find information for task 1 that may have already been completed. Guess what? Everything that I've talked about, if you go back to the APSL, task 1 through 3, guess what? You're going to find a lot of that information already in there. And if it's there, copy and paste it and put it in there. But I'm coming back to that. And then, where else can you find it? In the OMA, task 1 and 2, and in the CAP that you're working on right now, task 1 and 2. They may have some attendance and disciplinary data in there. So this is where you can go and find a lot of stuff that's already been done that you can include in task 1. Now I'm going to tell you, it gets you started. I'm not going to go into task 2. I will break it down next week. I'm just getting you started. However, you can go into task 2 on your own. I will take you this far. When you go through it and break it down, look what I've done at the very end. This is where you can find stuff that you've already done that's going to help you with task 2. And I've done it all the way through. So I'm getting you started with that. But now the thing that you've got to remember, and I'm going to stop sharing because I want to see you when I say this. Where am I? Stop sharing. The thing that you've got to remember, when you go back and you find all this information that you've already done and you start putting it in there, the key is your narrative work. you've got to have a strong, a powerful opening foundation narrative. Remember, that's your the task. What is your foundation? So you've got to have a strong introduction leading into that. Very powerful. When you start putting those headings in there, you don't just say discipline data. Your narrative transitions. You've got to flow. Your narrative transitions have got to be in there. And as you remember, you're telling the story. And when you read a book or you read a story, guess what? It transitions from one thought to the next. So what I'm going to look for and what Dr. Revis is going to look for, because she's going to help me with looking at your PSYOP. That's, to me, all of them is important, but this is the culmination. This is the culmination of all the work that you've been doing for the last year. So I want it to be the best end product that we can submit to your evaluators. So think about your transitions. And what I would think about when you get to the end of task one, all of it's got to seamlessly tie together. So when you get to the end of task one, you think about, how can I close out task one that leads directly in to task two? It should be a seamless book. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and they lead in to each other. Does what I said, does it make sense what I'm saying? Okay. For those of you that are at that place, Philip, I know you had already started working on yours, but does that help with what I was telling you to hold off on? And
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense with what you need to go back and look at?
Yeah, and when I was looking at it, I'll be honest with you, like I had already, you should see my tabs. I had my OMA, my app, some of those things pulled up because I was looking back. I thought like it was making light bulbs go off. Like, wait a minute, I can go back and look at this because I've already pulled data from like the teaching work condition survey and things like that.
Right. Good. But you got a lot accomplished with what you sent to me. A lot was in there. But
So, Dr. Stedman, let me ask a
Go
question.
ahead.
Okay, so I'm one of your students, and I've already done all this stuff. I've already led a PLC through an examination of our student performance data. I've led the PLC through teacher work. I've already done all that. Do I need to do another PLC now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You've got the skill. Your PLC has got to help pull all of this together, or your responsibility is to pull it together. You present to them. You are presenting to them. They are going to, and if there are missing pieces, you should have strong people on there that says, Erica, have you thought about so-and-so? Or you need to say to them, Michael, you need to say to them, what do you, this is where I actually, if it were me, when I did task one, I would put it together and I would have task one there. I would hand it out. This is my task one. I would have slide presentations, PowerPoints, and I would say, this is where I am. And, I would get suggestions from them, as a team, and that you're getting input from them. And that shows you leading your team, but you're leading the team with the work that you've pulled together, basically, is what you're doing.
Exactly. I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in the copying and pasting. You're going to copy and paste a lot of your data sets.
Right.
Not as much of your narrative from the APSL. We shouldn't be reading that in February of 2022, my PLC, No, you pull your data from that presentation. You make it, that's why you have a new team.
Right. And you take out what is not relevant. You use what is relevant, but you take out what is not relevant, and you may say, okay, I just need to update this part right here. And you update it as applicable to whatever it is that you need. But you've got a lot of stuff you can use. A lot of stuff. You just got to figure it out. Like Philip was saying, you need to go through and put tabs out there and map it out. You just map it out. And then you've got to put it in an organized way, and you've got to tie it all together. Okay? Is this enough to get you started? Anybody that, Rebecca, I know you're at that place. Emma, you're at that place. Who else? Who it was Stephen. Stephen, I think you're those of you that are at that place already, is this enough to get you started?
Yes.
Okay, somebody's got their hands raised. Just speak up.
So I just had a quick question. I know that last semester in 603, we had some concerns about the Turnitin process when it came to copy and pasting, and then Turnitin was like flagging it for being like plagiarized, even though it was our own work. Should we be concerned about that with this assignment as well?
Well, it's going to be, the Turnitin is going to be a high rate, because it's going to be rated against work you've already done.
Right.
You don't have to worry about that. That you just make sure that it's your work, and it will, when I go in there, it will show me that it's your work.
Got it.
Now, and again, at this point, there are certain things that that is going to it may show against another student's work, but it would be with all of you. Guess what? Because all of you would have pulled some of the same information. Even when you look at the directions in black, that shows up. So let me tell you that Dr. Revis and I've been doing this for a long time. You can't fool us on this, and I don't think any of you are going to try to. You're going to be all right if you do what you're supposed to do. And I know that it's going to be when it comes back, the number is going to be much higher than it has been with any of the other work you've done, but you're working against yourself, Emma. Okay? So, but that's a good question. Nari?
My question is not really relevant to everybody else, so can I stay after a little bit? Because I guess my concern is with the PSYOP, I got 2 different schools.
Does anybody else have 2 different schools that you're working with? Has everybody been at the same school the whole time? Okay. Yeah, Arias is, Arias wants to talk with us about something too, but it's okay. The rest, Arias, just hold on and let us answer Nari's question, and then we'll talk with you after we get through with Nari, okay? Can you hold on just a minute, Arias? Are there any other questions before we close out? Does everybody know what's expected of you this week? And are you clear with what you've got to do with your assignment 4 and closing out the CAP, and then those of you that can begin the PSYOP, are you at a good place to get started? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Nari, hold on, and Arias, hold on. Okay, we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank y'all.
Okay, bye-bye.